What's up, guys? So, recently I had somebody ask me to basically revisit a topic that I've spoke about previously, actually a couple times in a couple different videos, but that's okay. Maybe they didn't see it, maybe you guys didn't see it, so why not take this opportunity to get you guys another opportunity, basically, to see the topic. So, obviously, it's going to be about ball pythons. This here is my pastel leopard female. I recently got her, I don't know, a few months ago. Gorgeous animal. I got her in a local deal, or from a local keeper. And I figured she'll be the centerpiece of the video. So, when getting a ball python, personally, it's one of the best beginning or beginner reptiles. Even for experienced keepers, ball pythons are just awesome. Some people will say that they are pet rocks because they don't really do much compared to, say, other reptiles. And that's true. They don't do much compared to other reptiles. However, typically, these guys are going to be sufficient animals for your average keeper. Couple names for them, obviously ball python, she's caught up in my bracelet. Ball pythons, because when they are scared, they do ball up, hence the name ball python. Another name is royal pythons, and that's because back in Cleopatra's reign, she actually used to wear these guys as jewelry. I was going to show you, kind of give you guys an example, but she is not really wanting to cooperate, and she wants to be inside of my jewelry versus actually being jewelry. So, a couple things to look at when getting ball pythons. Generally, any animal, any reptile and whatnot. But again, today's topic is ball pythons, so we're going to talk just about them. You want to examine your animal when getting it. You want to look it up and down. Here's an example of her being kind of like a bracelet, intertwined with my bracelet. But you want to look the animal up and down. You want to look between the scales as closely as you can for signs of mites, also signs of past injuries that may or may not need basically extra care to that area. Not only are you looking at the scales, you're also going to look at that tongue flicker. With ball pythons, unfortunately, there's a lot of, I guess we can call them or consider them backyard breeders or backyard keepers, and they don't actually care for their animals properly, so they may end up selling you an animal with, say, a respiratory infection. Unfortunately, I had a buddy of mine recently get an animal. It was actually a VPI exanthic female, subadult, good size. She's about 800 grams. However, he wasn't really sure what he was looking for. He took their word on it and got the animal. And unfortunately, because he didn't look that animal over, it had, I don't know if she's really gonna let me show you guys, but this is her belly scales, or what some of us refer to as track scales. For some reason, some people don't like to refer to them as track scales. Not really sure why. However, on the animal that he received, her track scales actually have signs of scale rot. The signs of scale rot that is present do look like it is in a healing process. And I advised him how to take care of such. However, he wasn't really sure what exactly, sorry guys, I'm just trying to get her untangled. He wasn't sure what to look for, so when he seen that, he kind of just thought that it was a normal thing for the animal. He thought it was just normal belly coloration for the morph or paint job. However, that wasn't the case, and even after such, once we kind of investigated a little more, she started wheezing. Her tongue was not flickering. Well, it was flickering, but it wasn't forked, and you couldn't see the split. You could only see one part of the tongue, just one whole tongue coming in and out instead of out and out and out. So that's sign of respiratory. And if you get respiratory in one of your animals, obviously you have the ability and possibility to have all your other animals contract said respiratory infection, RI. Snakes don't fart. There was actually a video not too long ago on TikTok, and I made sure that I stitched it, or however you guys want to word it, on my TikTok. And the video was a snake in its tank, and it was basically farting, but through its mouth, which obviously wouldn't be a fart, but it's also not something that snakes do. That's just not a thing. Unfortunately, that snake showed clear signs of respiratory infection, but the individual, unfortunately, as most do, thought that he knew more than an experienced breeder or even an experienced keeper, and even vets that explained to him otherwise. However, even if you see normal tongue flickering, like she's a little head shy, but even if you see normal tongue flickering and that fork like you can with her, that doesn't always mean that you're in the clear. So you always want to quarantine your animals when you get them. You don't want to basically introduce them directly into Gen Pop or into, if you do rack systems like I and most breeders, if you do that, you don't want to put your new animal directly in that rack system, just because you're not sure. It could take a little bit for that respiratory to actually show. Some animals, it shows a lot sooner than others. Some animals can overcome it a lot better than others. And obviously, some animals, they can get it, contract it, and literally die shortly after, no matter what you do. So, to get off of the whole respiratory issue, obviously that's not the only thing that can occur with these guys, but when dealing with ball pythons, again, they are a great beginner reptile, because males, they're going to max out at 4 feet. Due to sexual dimorphism, females will get bigger within this species. Generally, within all snake species, the females are the biggest. If you guys have any, if you guys can name any snakes that are opposite, where the males would be the biggest of the species, please make sure to comment that down below. It will be news to me, and I would like to obviously learn. So, again, typically females are going to be bigger due to sexual dimorphism, and females of the ball python species, they're going to max out about 6 feet. Now, there's some people and some claims that ball pythons from different areas, for instance, Volta, if I'm not mistaken, Volta is a line, I think. I'm not too familiar on it, so you can't really hold me to that. However, some people seem to think that those animals from that region are actually bigger, have the potential to surpass that 4 and 6 foot mark. Again, I'm not too familiar with that. In my experience, that's not true. I have never got even picture evidence or anything to show that a ball python itself would be bigger than 6 feet. I do know for a fact that people, I've spoke to people directly who have had animals that they called ball pythons, and They had them reach, you know, between 8 and 10 feet. And then upon trying to basically vividly describe the animal, they have confirmed that on several occasions, several different people have confirmed that the animal that they thought that they had, or the animal that they thought was a ball python, was actually red-tailed boa. So that's very common misconception for some reason. Not really sure. Those are boas where these are pythons. However, when it comes to temperatures, you're going to want, I'm going to try to put her around my wrist a little bit. If she lets me, she's not really trying to work with me. Okay, so ambient temperatures, you're going to want around 78. Calm down. So 78 to about 80, again, that's ambient temperatures. So where the heat source is not directly basically touching or warming, so to speak. The hot spot you want, sorry, the hot spot you want about 90 to 95 degrees. Obviously, you can fluctuate these temperatures a little bit. You don't really want to go anything lower than 70. Now, don't get me wrong, these animals in the wild have been known to endure temperatures below 50 with no issues. However, they're more susceptible to issues such as respiratory infections if they get colder than 70 degrees typically. But I don't like my animals to get anywhere below 78. That's just my preference. And then the humidity, about 55 to 60%, or even 50 to 60%, is really where you want it to be. You don't want it too high and you don't want it too low, because again, those issues could cause respiratory infections. But obviously these guys are going to eat rodents. They're going to eat rats, mice, ASFs, or African soft fur rats, which are actually mice. Don't ask me why they're called rats, but ASFs are actually going to be their natural prey. So what they would eat in the wild is going to be what they're going to, not so much what they're going to need, but it's kind of like their preference. Now, you can get these animals where they go on hunger strike, or they go off of food for however long. Now, mind you, ball pythons, generally all reptiles, can go a very long time without eating, as long as they're not sick, other than just not eating. So it's not something that you really have to worry about, but obviously new keepers are gonna freak out if their animal goes a few weeks without eating. ASFs typically bounce them back to get them to eat, but it's just one of those things. You may not be able to find ASFs. I'm sorry, guys, there's a bunch of flies in here for some reason. But you may not be able to find ASFs where you're located, and that can be tricky sometimes. But other than the feeding, you want to feed once a week. Some people say you can go twice a week, and that's just not going to be the case. Not with balls anyways. You know, more so that's going to be like with boas, bigger boas. You don't want to, so much with babies, you don't want to give them something to, you don't want to give it sparse out like that. You want to make sure that they have enough nutrients to actually grow happy and healthy. And an animal like this probably would be okay in a 10-gallon. However, I would recommend nothing smaller than a 20-gallon for an animal of this size. Maybe a hatchling in a 10, and an animal at this size would be considered a juvenile, and in a 20-gallon, 20-gallon long. So when it comes to doing tanks, again, with balls, there's so many different options and methods. Some people do not recommend putting ball pythons in tanks because the humidity doesn't get held properly, which is 100% factual. However, if you're on top of your game, basically, and you have gauges that will read your humidity and you're paying attention to it, you can obviously adjust your humidity as needed. It is easier ultimately, especially when you have multiple animals. It is easier for a rack system, and it does not harm that animal. These ball pythons actually like to be in hides or holes in the ground in their natural environment. And that's kind of what the rack does. It acts as a hideaway. So you don't need to add a hide in there. You can if you want to. You don't need it though. You basically just need the tote, the bedding, and a water dish. That's really all you need for these guys. Now in a tank setup, I don't recommend belly heat for a ball python or realistically any snake or almost anything. I recommend a light on top of them, and I don't have a light right here next to me, but for heating these guys up, if you have them in a tank, I also would recommend a regular light bulb versus a reptile light. In my experience, reptile lights, which you may be paying $20 a pop for from the pet shop, they seem not to work. They don't get up to the temperatures where they tell you on the box, you know, at 12 inches it should get up to 103 or what. That doesn't seem to work for me. So what I do is I actually go to my local Roll King and I will pick up regular light bulbs, 100 to 150 watt light bulbs, whether they're clear or even frosted, doesn't much matter. But I will put it in a unit, a light unit, and put it right on top of the lid, and obviously read the temperatures and just stay on top of it just to make sure that your temperatures are all in range, as well as your humidity. And when it comes to substrate, that's going to play a huge role in your humidity as well. Now, with ball pythons, you have almost unlimited source of possibilities. You can do anything from plantation soil, reptibark, coconut fiber, coconut husks, whatever you want, repticarpet, newspaper, paper towel, toilet paper, college ruled, you know, anything basically that you want, other than, say, pine or cedar. Realistically, any hardwood. You're not going to want any hardwood because that hardwood has oils, and the oils in the hardwood are actually going to have a risk factor to harming your animals. Again, respiratory infection. So what I recommend is cypress mulch. Number one, it's almost like the cheapest substrate that you can get, but it holds humidity so much better than a lot of other things on the market. Obviously, it holds humidity better than paper towel. It holds humidity better than newspaper, better than repticarpet. You know, the list goes on. But also, it just looks better. So a lot of people, they'll get a darker animal and they'll want it on something light. The substrate to be light. For instance, like aspen. You can use aspen, no problem. However, it's not going to really be as humid as you need it to unless you're on top of your A game and misting your enclosure to keep it within range. So for easiest keeping abilities, again, I recommend strongly for cypress mulch. At Lowe's, it's like $2. It's under $3. It's like $2.57 or something like that. Under $3 for a bag of cypress mulch. When getting bedding, it's probably best to throw it in the freezer for a few days, just to make sure there's nothing in it or on it. For instance, mites. If you go to a pet shop, assume that that bedding has mites, especially a pet shop like Petco, PetSmart, Pet Supermarket. Assume they have mites because obviously they don't take care of their animals properly, and I've experienced mites on past animals that unfortunately came from them. So throw it in the freezer for a few days. That will kill everything, and then you can use your substrate, bedding, whatnot directly after. And guys, that's really going to be the end of it. It doesn't get much simpler than that. You may get stuck shed issues, for instance, this girl here, and obviously you can get that with improper humidity as well. This girl here, for whatever reason, and even her litter mates, clutch mates, whatever you want to call them, they have the same issue as her, which I'm not really sure as to what that issue is. But for whatever reason, the top of her head and neck area, when she sheds, likes to stick for some reason, and it doesn't want to come off in a whole piece because of that. So if you have that issue, all you do is you get a small tote, a 6-quart tub with a lid, warm water. You don't want to do like hot water, and obviously you don't want cold water. You want just warm water, and let your animal be in that tote for about 15 to 30 minutes. And either you can peel it off, being a piece of jewelry, either you can peel it off after the soak, or you can just put them back in their enclosure and let them handle it. Typically they can handle it after they soak. And guys, that's basically it. You don't need UVB for these. You don't need any special lighting other than obviously the heat light. You can even use heat emitters if you're doing a tank setup. Obviously, you still could use heat mats. Just stay on top of your stuff, pay attention to it. I've seen too many times where snakes actually get burnt from a heat mat. It's not something that you want. But if you guys have any questions on this species, or if you want me to revisit another species that maybe I have visited or maybe I haven't even visited in previous videos, comment that down below. Let me know, and I'll try to get it out for you guys in a timely fashion. Other than that, make sure you check out the links in the description. Have a good day. Subscribe if you haven't already. I love you, and I'll see you next time. All right, take care, guys.